Hey everybody, Paul Mack here. I've got another viewer question. This one reads this way. Hi Paul Mack, I really love your show and I glean a lot of how-to from you. My question, how big is the tiny milking barn? I have some Nigerian goats I would like to start milking sometime and found your design most appealing. Or would you recommend building a milking parlor into the barn? I plan on buying your pole barn book. Any advice would be helpful if you have the time to respond. Your brother in Christ, John. Now, what John is referring to here are the two structures that I built on the YouTube show. One of them is the pole barn workshop that I'm standing in here. There's a series on that. I'll have the link on the series below where you can go back and watch that. The other structure he's referring to is the small milking barn that I built out in the middle of my pasture so that I can very easily put calves up, separate them from the mamas, and milk the cows. So John's question is, should he build a smaller structure for his goats, or should he build a larger structure and have the milking area within the larger structure? Well, John, this is easy. Either one of those alternatives would be good for your situation. The smaller milking shed, if that's where you wanted to house your milking supplies and actually milk your goats, a good place to milk goats out of the rain, which I highly recommend. It would be suited to your needs, and it would perhaps be located close to the area where you graze the goats from day to day. The pole barn would obviously be a much larger structure. It would take more materials and more time to build, but it too would be a fine option if you wanted to house for instance, in one section, perhaps you could use a side shed located in the direction of your goat pasture attached to that side of the pole barn. And you could use one section maybe in the side shed for milking, or maybe an interior portion like in here for the milking. It's just however you want it. And really what it comes down to is, I guess, a couple of things. How much time do you want to spend in building either one of those structures? One is smaller than the other. One is obviously larger. As I said, more materials and a little bit more time to build it, a little more of a challenge. But it also comes down to convenience. If you don't mind having a larger structure, and you need a larger structure because you could obviously put more things in it. You could house, if you have other livestock, like a horse or hogs or chickens or whatever, you could obviously keep them in a portion of that larger building. Or you could store equipment. You could drive your tractor under the side shed, store your tractor, lawnmower, boat, just whatever equipment. You could have a tool shed in one section of it, much like what I've got here. Keep feed, tack, or hay, or just whatever you need. If your goat pasture is a good distance from your home and you don't mind having your tractor and your tool shed and everything out in that location, then maybe that's a good option. But if your goat pasture or the area you graze the goats is a distance away and you only want to milk there and you want your other things closer to the house, well then you might just want to build the small milking shed for the goats and be done with it and have that. And if things ever change in the future and you move your goats somewhere else, or you decide that you want to milk closer to your house, you could have the milking shed turn into something completely different. Have it store a tractor or equipment or whatever. So, it depends on your situation. Now, my pole barn here, the interior dimensions are about 22 foot by 20 foot, and I have enclosed one side shed on one side. The other side shed is open to the weather. I keep things I'm working on out there, just whatever. At the moment, it's got an old wagon that needs fixing up, sitting under it, taking up my space. But the pole barn could be built whatever dimension you want. You don't have to have it as roomy as this one, or you could actually, if you wanted to, you can make it somewhat larger, or you could include both side sheds as interior structure, or you could just have this one 11 by 22 foot section enclosed and have a side shed on either side. It's very flexible. However you wanted to build it would be, you have a lot of options there. So again, probably the major thing that you want to be thinking about is, number one, how much time do you want to, and materials do you want to involve in building a larger structure or a smaller structure? The other big thing to think about is this large word called convenience. Do you want the goat barn located more conveniently to your house? If so, put it in a pole barn. Or do you want it out in the pasture where the goats are? One of the tricks, one of the keys to laying out your farm, if maybe you're somebody who's just starting out and you've got a piece of property and you're thinking about where everything is going to go, one of the major things you want to think about is placement, i.e. saving steps. You want everything pretty conveniently located so you're not spending a lot of time walking to and from this place, going here, going there, because steps saved are time saved. Time saved is money saved. We've only got so much time in a day, so placement of structures that is very convenient and flows. You want to have a flow to your farm. This thing is here, needed next to this thing that you need quite often, next to this place that houses your tools where you can fix this other thing or whatever. Or this enterprise needs to be close to this enterprise because you want to be able to haul your manure from here to the garden area or whatever. That's something that you need to think about. So if you are somebody who's starting out with a new property, maybe you want to sit down with your spouse or your kids and just talk about what things do we want to grow here or raise here, what livestock do we want to raise, what vegetables do we want to grow, what buildings are we going to need to be able to do that fluidly and easily, and therefore that kind of dictates where those things need to be and what they need to be, how big they need to be or how small they need to be. Whatever you can build and get away with it and do it in an efficient and economical manner. So those are all things that you should sit down together and draw maps of your property. Draw the property line out and kind of place things around. You can even cut out little cardboard, buildings that you can move around as you're thinking about, and then draw little fence areas as to where everything's going to go, how you're going to rotate your grazing areas, where your garden is going to be. And that's a fun thing to do. It's so exciting when you're starting out. In fact, building is building a farm. It's all in the doing and not necessarily in the having. It's so much fun to lay something out and to be thinking about it and dreaming together, especially if you've got a spouse that's on the same page and you're both into the small gardening and the homesteading. It's just so much fun to lay that out. One little tip I want to tell you, when you're laying out your farm on a piece of paper, always date the piece of paper in a corner because you'll work out a plan. You'll think, man, this is just this is how we want to do it. This flows, this fits. Put a date up in the corner or wherever, because I guarantee you the next day you're going to come up with a different plan. You're going to be thinking, oh, wait, I can move this here and that'll be much more efficient. And then you'll draw a new plan. Pretty soon, I guarantee you're going to have about a dozen plans laying around on your desk. And when you create that perfect plan, you think, oh, I'll remember this. And if you don't date it, you're going to come back in a week or two, if you're like me, and you're going to be looking at all your papers going, which one was my latest, greatest idea? I can't remember. I'm sure you're smarter than I am. You wouldn't have this problem. But if you're like me, date your paper. Now remember, I've got a book, Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. If you've never built a structure that large before, it's just for you. Or maybe you are a carpenter. It'll still give you a lot of tips. Basically, I wrote the book so that the pole barn is adjustable to your needs. You can make it a little smaller if you want. You can do different things with it. You could even live in it if you wanted to put in a wood floor or whatever. So Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn, I'll have the link in the description below where you can see that book if you're interested in buying that. Or also, I've got a playlist on building the workshop, the pole barn that I'm standing in. I also have another series on building the milking shed that's sitting out in the pasture that John was referring to. So if you want to watch that particular build, go find the Building a Milking Shed playlist, I think. I'll have the link below so that you don't have to go very far in looking. If you got a question about anything related to the farm or about building a chicken house, a pole barn, a milking shed, a place that you can escape while your wife is mad at you for 24 hours, or a smokehouse. Hey, smokehouses are fun too. If you got a question about anything, leave it in the comment section below. And if it's a great question and I think a lot of people will benefit from us talking about it, we'll do it on a future episode of this, the Farmhands Companion Q&A show. I'm Paul Mack. Until next time, I'll talk at you later. Foothills Readiness 9208. Paul Mack, I thought you were going to show us the processing of a hog. Well, I'd love to, but it would have made a 14-minute video 2 hours and 14 minutes, and only me and you probably would have kept watching, and maybe only you.